In this week's Parsha Yitro, you have a pasuk here in Shmos 19:4. It says, I have borne you on the wings of eagles and brought you unto me. Say we came on the wings of eagles. When we left Mitzrayim, we went on the wings of eagles. So what does it mean, the wings of eagles? So the Sforno explains, let me bring the Sforno, here I got a copy of the Sforno. It says, I carried you on eagle's wings and on a road that no other person has traversed. Like an eagle who takes his young ones high in the air, who no other bird will fly. This was not to separate you from the nations and their pursuits to be unto me. In other words, the eagle's not worried that anybody's going to attack him from on top. So the eagle put him on top of the eagle's wings. And at that point, the little baby eagle, is separate from everybody else. So to Hashem separated us completely. When he took us out of Mitzrayim, he separated us completely. This was all to get ready for Matan Torah. This was the preparation for Torah. Hashem separated us. He says it was to separate you from the nations and the pursuits to be unto me. Hashem wanted to separate us from the rest of the world. So Rav Chaim Leibowitz asked the Kasha, he says, wasn't it enough that we saw all the plagues, we saw Kriyas Yam Suf, we saw all these things? Hashem had to again separate us to a new level and separate us in order to receive the Torah? It would be enough that we saw all the miracles and that we could receive the Torah. It should be adequate. So he wanted to say, our physical isolation in the barren desert enabled us to psychologically separate themselves from the destructive influences. It wasn't sufficient for the Jewish people just to leave Egypt with miracles and to go into the desert to be separated. He had to separate us completely, that we had isolation. Why? To separate us from the destructive influences of the nations. So, it brings a Rambam. The Rambam in Hilchos Deil says like this. This is a famous Rambam, everybody knows it. It says, it is natural for a man's character and his actions to be influenced by his friends and associates. People are influenced by other people and the local norms of behavior. Therefore, a person should always associate himself with the righteous and be in the company of the wise to learn from them. And then, this is the famous thing here that everybody knows. A person who lives in a place where the norms of his behavior are evil and the inhabitants do not follow the straight path should move to a place where the people are righteous. He should move in with righteous people. He says to the extent, he brings a couple of different cases here, but he says if he can't find any other place where people are behaving themselves, he should actually, if the wicked and sinful are not allowed to reside there, because he can't stay in his own house, he should go out into caves and thickets and deserts, rather than follow the path of the sinners. So the Rambam says we have to separate ourselves to the point where if there's people, everybody's like in our society, he says in his time, when people are evil. Of course you can in our time, we should separate ourselves. We should go to the desert. Whatever bad influences are out there, we should separate ourselves from them. And how do we separate ourselves from them? Because he says we can separate ourselves from them by just going to the base of Midrash. By being here all day, sitting and learning, at morning Seder, afternoon Seder, night Seder, we're separated enough from society that society is not going to influence us. But the point is that if we're around bad people, we have bad influence, we're going to be influenced. That's the nature of man. The nature of man, and according to the Rambam, is that if a person has bad friends and bad people that he hangs around with, he's going to be influenced. If he has bad television coming in, if he has bad internet, he's going to be influenced. He has to separate himself from all these things. So the Chazon Ish says, I'm not sure if this is a Chazon Ish or Rebbe Leibowitz, according to the Chazon Ish, but he says that the base of Midrash has an extra quality. The extra quality is the Torah that you're learning is also influencing you in a positive. Not only is separating from the negative, but by being here, you're getting positive influence. You're starting to think straight, you think about the right ideas, you're reading Chazals, what's right and what's wrong. And you're thinking about which path to take, as compared to being influenced. So the base Midrash does have an extra quality. So the Chafetz Chaim comes along, this is really interesting, and he speaks on a different pasuk. Pasuk Yud Chet Gimel Through Daled, Parak Yud Chet Gimel Through Daled. The first son of Moshe Rabbeinu was named Gershom because he said, I was a stranger in a strange land. And therefore he named his son Gershom. The second one was Eliezer, Ki Hashem Avi Be'ezri. Hashem helped me. So the Chafetz Chaim says, wait a second, it's backwards. He should have named his first son after the miracle. It was basically the miracle. What happened when Moshe Rabbeinu tried to run away, and he got, because he killed the Mitzri, and he almost got caught, but he got away. Hashem, the pasuk says that Hashem saved me. He gave shock to Hashem that Hashem helped him, Eliezer. So he should have named the first one after the next. That's the first question of the Chafetz Chaim. The second question is, and what does he gain by naming his son Gershom while I was a stranger in a strange land? What does he gain by that? He wants to say that the problem was that Moshe Rabbeinu had to go to Yitro. He had to go back to Yitro. So he was scared that going back to Yitro was going to influence him in a negative way. So he named his son a stranger in a strange land in order to remind him, to impress on his heart, not to be influenced, to realize that he's a ger. We're gering with this artist. This world is temporary. We came down from above. We're not really part of this world. Well, we are part of this world. We were put here for a reason, obviously. But we're supposed to separate ourselves from the ways of the world. From like the word we just said here. They have to separate ourselves from what everybody else is influencing us, and we have to follow the Torah way. So Moshe Rabbeinu named his son in order to remind him of that. So he wants to bring this, the famous mashal, the Chofetz Chaim. The Chofetz Chaim wants to bring a mashal. He says it's like a guy that has to travel very, very far, and he has this opportunity to sell his schora, his stuff. He sells his stuff in this place, but he has to travel very far to get here, and he's here for a limited amount of time, and he has to sell his stuff. So he says, if people start coming up to him and say, hey, did you read what's in the paper? Itonim, or you want to play with my saksua, look at these games that I have, all these things. He says, leave me alone. Listen, I traveled all this way. I came all the way here. I'm limited in time. Don't bother me. Don't bother me. I have things to do. I'm busy. The Nib shows this world. We came from the heavens. We came down here for a purpose. We're limited to 120 years. If somebody comes around bugging you and saying, listen, you want to see what happened in the newspaper, look at the magazines, look at all these different things. So, you say, listen, get out of here, I'm busy. That's what you should be saying. So the focus of the Chofetz Chaim, he says here in the mashal, is time. Time. I came here for a limited amount of time. Do not bother me. I came here to do Avodas Hashem. So I was thinking, like, why he brought that mashal? This whole thing was that I'm a ger here. That's what, I'm a ger. I'm a stranger here. So he should have said, well, don't be influenced, or don't let them bother you. Or, I mean, that could have been also, the mashal could have been that he shouldn't be influenced by these people or not. He says time. My time. So I was thinking, and it's good, I was thinking that Einochinami, the fabric of life in a certain sense is time, so I don't know if it's really a fair chiluk. But the focus of how to be a ger, how to be a stranger here, which is our goal and our Avodas Hashem, to separate ourselves from the influence of the world. We have to focus on time. What am I doing? According to Chofetz Chaim, it's a question of time. What am I doing? The ikar, the most fundamental thing that pulls us in is like, what are you doing with your time? And then you'll be able to say, okay, what am I doing with my time? Am I reading magazines and doing... See, the world is basically wasting your time. Unless you're doing mitzvahs. Unless you're doing a mitzvah, you're learning Torah, the same thing mitzvah. Unless you're serving Hashem, you're serving God, you're wasting your time. What are you doing? You're wasting your time. We're not necessarily aware of that, but we're wasting our time. If you're on the internet, you're on the television, you're reading magazines, and you're doing all these things, and you're going around. I mean, it's very hard. I'm not saying it's not hard. It's a big nisayon for everybody, especially since that's the whole point. The whole world is telling you to waste your time. That's what it means in this world. This world is telling you to waste your time. Watch this, get involved with your clothes, get involved with your car, get involved with your couches, spend hours trying to figure out what kind of, redo your kitchens. I don't know what you do. But if it's a mitzvah, I don't say no. There's nothing wrong with having nice things and doing a good thing. If it's a mitzvah, fine. But if it's not a mitzvah, you're just wasting your time. And that's what it means. And that's what we have to separate ourselves from. We have to separate ourselves from this idea of wasting time, because the whole world's telling you to waste your time. Go to the movies, watch this, look at this, get involved with that, talk shows, sports, I don't know, there's so many things. It's a wave. It's a wave of a waste of time. And that's the fight. The fight is to not waste your time. And according to the mashal of the Chofetz Chaim, that's the ikar chiluk that a person has to make. And that's the cheshbon. Am I biddling my time? Or is it the middle Torah what I'm doing? Look, I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying, if you read stories about Aaron Cutler, he didn't know what he was eating. His wife would cut his food, and he would eat his dinner so involved in learning, he didn't know if he was milk or flesh. And he didn't know what he ate. Sometimes he forgot if he ate. Did I? That's why he benched it. This is somebody who's every second of his life, he was always taking Torah. He was involved in learning. I'm saying, unfortunately, we're not holding that. But wherever we are holding, we have to try to increase, to use more of our time to our Avodas Hashem, and not to have the middle Torah. And that is where we're being influenced. Because the world says, what are you, middle Torah? Come on, Torah, you're also second Torah. No, this is fun. Let's go out to restaurants and stuff. Sometimes you need those things, but how much? A person has to know himself. And not to be influenced, because the world is telling you to waste your time. Charles.